Okay, so this is the setup for the lab demo. Azif was gracious enough to set this up, so thank you, Azif. So in this lab demo, we do have a property-wide SSID called Irvine Apartments. This is configured with EPSK, so this is something that you guys should be pretty familiar with already. So in this example, there's two tenants. We can call them Mike and Sally. So if Mike lives in apartment unit 1600, then we will map his devices to VLAN 1600. He'll have his own unique EPSK. Similarly, Sally will have her own unique EPSK. If she lives in unit 1610, she'll be mapped to VLAN 1610. So all of this is stuff that you guys are familiar with. So what's new is the personal SSID or the personal Wi-Fi. So for Mike, we will name the personal Wi-Fi SSID as Mike's Wireless, and we will also map those devices to the same VLAN. So this is important to put them into the same VLAN so that devices can see each other even if they're connecting to different SSIDs. And then for Sally, her devices will be mapped to VLAN 1610 as well, just like her EPSK maps her to 1610. And we will have a device override for the personal SSID to be named Sally's Internet for her AP in apartment 1610. Okay, so let's dive into the configuration. So here's the same Maestro X account that Azif was demonstrating from. So if we go to Monitor and Manage in System, we can then navigate to the Irvine Company tenant account. We can expand on the Austin network as well as the building site. So once we go to the site level, we can take a look at the clients that are connecting to this lab. So here we see that there are several devices connecting. There's Mike's iPhone 13 Pro, which is a mobile device. So typically mobile devices would be best served connecting to the property-wide SSID because of how mobile they are and how they'll be roaming a lot. So this is connecting to the SSID called Irvine Apartments using an EPSK, which maps that device to VLAN 1600. Similarly, Sally has a MacBook that probably roams a lot as well. So that's also connecting to the property-wide SSID, and that maps her to VLAN 1610. You can sort and filter by column or by row. So here, let's just focus on Mike. We can sort it by VLAN, but let's just filter out the other stuff so there's less noise. So for Mike, we see that there's an additional device that's connecting to VLAN 1600, which would be his thermostat. So you can connect static stationary devices to the property-wide SSID using EPSK, but once you enable personal SSID, it'll make a lot more sense to connect those static devices to the personal SSID so you have full control over what AP those devices are connecting to. So this eliminates the issue of client devices making poor decisions of connecting to an AP that's on a different floor. So here the thermostat is not connecting to the property-wide SSID, it's connecting to the personal SSID of Mike's Wireless, which also puts it into the same VLAN of VLAN 1600. Okay, so if we take a look at the configuration of one of these APs, let's just take a look at the device config to make sure that everything makes sense. So once you navigate to the device and then click on the configuration tab and then click on view device configs, you can then view the configuration in JSON language. You can download it and then open it up in Word or WordPad. So the very top of the configuration is basically just the management settings. And then you also have the RF settings for your radios. Radio 1 is the 2.4 radio, radio 2 is the 5 gig radio in this example here. And then as we scroll down, we get into the good stuff. So wireless LAN is the property-wide SSID. And you can see here that it does support EPSK, right? So we have a few EPSK accounts that have been configured for this property-wide SSID. Mike on EPSK 1600 and Sally on EPSK 1610. If we scroll to the right, we see that these EPSKs are mapping to the desired VLANs of 1600 and 1610. So that's as expected. Wireless LAN 2 is what's new. So this is the personal wireless LAN. And here, this is configured for Mike's Wireless. And this is only the case for this AP in unit 1600. So you can see that the SSID name is Mike's Wireless. And the devices that are connecting to this wireless LAN are connecting to VLAN 1600. Similarly, for unit 1610, we should see that this is advertising Sally's internet and not Mike's wireless. So if we navigate or scroll to wireless LAN 2, you see that yes, this SSID is Sally's internet, and devices that connect to this wireless LAN are being mapped to VLAN 1610. Okay, so that's just a quick look at the setup. Let's go into the configuration of personal Wi-Fi. So there's a couple of ways to navigate to the configuration section. So one way is to click on edit for the AP group when you're in the manage or monitor and manage section. Another way is to click on configuration and then Wi-Fi profiles, which will show you the AP groups, wireless LANs, access control policies, etc. So there's two ways of getting there. It doesn't matter how you navigate to it. So I'm just going to click on edit for the AP group. It actually keeps me in monitor and manage, and it takes me to a different tab within the navigation tree. So under networks, this is a hierarchy for a more geographical view, while Wi-Fi AP groups is more just for a view of the APs that are associated with the different AP groups that you may have configured. Okay, so let's go back to the AP group and then go to Irvine Austin. So I'm not going to spend any time here. I just want to show that the AP group that the APs in the lab are associated with have two wireless LANs associated with them. So one of them is Irvine Apartments, which is the property-wide SSID that is configured for EPSK. The second one is the personal wireless LAN that supports personal Wi-Fi. So let's take a look at the first one, which is the property-wide SSID. So once I click on that wireless LAN, it takes me to the wireless LAN config page. So once I go to EPSK, this is where I can see the EPSKs that have been created. So there's three, one for Mike, one for Sally, one for a demo unit that Asif may be touching on later. And you can see that they are mapping to the appropriate VLANs, and you can also see the passphrases. So you can also export this to a CSV, you can edit that CSV, and you can import it back. So this is all stuff that you guys are familiar with. Going back to the AP group of Irvine Austin, you can see that what's new is the Irvine Apartments personal wireless LAN. So this wireless LAN is disabled by default because not every single AP needs to advertise the personal SSID, right? All of the APs in the apartment units will, but APs in common areas like the pool or the gym will not necessarily advertise a personal SSID. You could do that if you wanted to confirm that the TVs in the gym are connecting to the AP in the gym. You could create a personal SSID for the gym, but that would be more of the exception rather than the rule. So this is disabled by default. You can also set the default VLAN to be VLAN 1 or any VLAN in a DMZ. So going back to EPSK, we are not going to configure this for EPSK. We're going to configure it as the base wireless LAN for the personal Wi-Fi SSID. So reading the text here, it says turning on the setting will disable this wireless LAN's SSID, which is what we saw here. And it says to use the Wi-Fi AP device configuration tab and to go to advanced settings in the wireless LAN section to enable it with a personalized SSID name. Okay, so that covers the config of the wireless LANs and AP groups. Let's then go back to each individual AP to see how that is done. So going back to Irvine Company in Austin and Building 1, going back to Mike's AP in Unit 1600, we have to go to the Configuration tab, and then we can scroll down to the Device Config, to Advanced Settings, and then to the Wireless LANs section. So the first wireless LAN is the property-wide SSID, which supports EPSK. So we do not want to set any overrides here. We want to set the overrides here on the second wireless LAN, which is the Irvine Apartments personal SSID. So if you've enabled personal SSID for the first time, all of these boxes will be unchecked by default. So because Mike resides in apartment 1600, we do want this AP to enable the personal SSID at that AP, and we do want to set the overrides. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to enable SSID. We'll check this box so that we can check this box so that this becomes true. These are just the default values. They will be overridden by the values that you're entering here. So then we can check the SSID box so that we could edit this, and then we'll edit it to change it from the default value of Irvine Apartments Personal to Mike's Wireless. We can also edit the passphrase, and then we can also edit the VLAN to make sure that the personal SSID is mapping to the VLAN that his EPSK maps his devices to on the property-wide SSID. Okay, so this is for Mike. For Sally, we would do the same thing. We would go to wireless LANs and then check all of these boxes so we can set these overrides. So that's how you configure personal Wi-Fi. If you have an MDU that you're providing managed services to, it probably doesn't make sense to configure this one by one, right? You're probably managing properties with hundreds or even thousands of units and rooms. So you wouldn't be doing it this way, you would be doing it en masse. So let's think about the workflow. So basically the workflow would be to go to configuration and Wi-Fi profiles. You probably already would have an AP group set up with a wireless LAN that supports EPSKs, right? So what you would have to do is you would add an additional wireless LAN. So let's call that wireless LAN personal Wi-Fi. And then we can, well, I won't spend any time here because Ozzy will be going over the best practices, but you can leave this on VLAN 1, or you can set this to a DMZ VLAN. You can, set the band steering, the security, etc. So Ozzy will be going over that in greater detail in the second section. And then we'll go to EPSK and we will check this box for the base wireless LAN for personal Wi-Fi, and then we would save it. So once you check this box, you'll notice that once you go back to wireless LAN, this is not enabled anymore. So this is disabled, which makes sense because it warns you right here. It says that turning on this setting will disable this wireless LAN's SSID. Again, it's not a big deal because you can set the overrides for the APs that will be advertising or broadcasting a personal SSID. So that's all there is to it. I'm just going to close it because I don't want to save that. You'll go to the AP group. So the AP group that you have your APs in the MDU associated to with the wireless LAN, with EPSK, and the additional wireless LAN that you would have just added, you would click on that and you would add that new wireless LAN, okay? So it's as simple as that. Once you've done that, then you can go back to monitor and manage and networks, and then you can do a mass configuration to all of the APs in that AP group. So I'm just navigating to the account, to the network, and to the site. Once you click on the site, there is a really powerful tab here called devices. So this is actually something that I learned about recently. This is kind of tucked away and hidden, but there's so much power that this tab provides that it's kind of hidden, and we should probably just make it a little more obvious. So when you click on this devices tab on the site level, there's 3 sub-tabs. The first one is list, and if you check on one device or multiple devices under actions, you can actually schedule a reboot. So that can be a pretty powerful feature. There's also a software update tab to where you can either apply a software update immediately or schedule it. And then there's a configuration tab. So we want to focus on the configuration tab because if you have hundreds of units that you wanted to configure quickly, you would be doing it here as opposed to clicking on each unit or AP one by one. So we only have 2 APs here, but it still illustrates the same point. We would check all of those APs. We would then, also you do have to make sure that you're clicking on the appropriate device type. I think the default is cnPilot Enterprise. So you do want to select the Enterprise Wi-Fi for Wi-Fi 6 for XC and XP. So then you would check all of those devices, you would click on configuration, and then here, this is where you can make those changes, and you can either apply it immediately or you could schedule that configuration. So this is really powerful. So one thing to note is that for your AP group, instead of clicking save after you've made the change of adding that wireless LAN, you can actually uncheck the box for auto sync and then save it. So that saves the AP group without propagating that change at that moment in time to all of the APs associated with that AP group. So just save that AP group with autosync unchecked, and then you could then come here and then schedule when that change is propagated to those APs. So then I can click on Irvine Austin, which is the AP group for the lab APs, and then I can click on the device overrides, and I can then go to wireless LANs, and then I can make the changes here. One other thing to show you guys is that you can export the EPSKs that are already set up. So if it's an MDU that you're providing managed services to and you already have EPSKs set up, you can go to the configuration and then go to wireless LANs, Irvine Apartments. In this example, go to EPSKs, and then you can export this, right? So instead of having to type in each of the passwords manually, where you can make a mistake where the EPSK and personal SSID password don't match because of a fat finger, it'll be safer to just do a copy paste, right? So I've done an export here. So if I open that file, I can see that that CSV file will have all of the EPSK information. It'll have the username, the passphrase, as well as the VLAN that it maps to. Okay, so from there you can do the copy paste of the passphrase as well as the VLANs. So going back to the devices list, so I click on devices and then configuration, and then I check all and then click on configuration. I will keep it associated with the same AP group. I'll expand on device overrides and then click on wireless LANs. And here I can actually export this as a CSV. And then once this is exported, I could make the changes to that CSV and then import it back. So looking at this exported CSV, it's already sort of pre-populated with information because these APs have been configured for personal Wi-Fi. But if not, these would actually be blank, right? So this is probably not too useful because you would have to figure out the MAC address of the unit, and then from there you could copy paste that information here. So that's just to show you how to do mass configurations. If you guys want assistance in configuring personal Wi-Fi, it'll probably be best to do it through APIs, and that's something that we can certainly help with. All right, Derek, so that's all I have for personal Wi-Fi. Any questions from the audience?
I have some questions here. Will the public SSID still be visible in the units?
Yes, they will be. So the property-wide SSID is still being advertised in every single AP that's associated with that AP group, but you also have additional wireless LANs now that allow you to set device overrides for unique personal SSIDs in each AP. So going back to monitor and manage, when we look at the AP's device configs, you'll see that it's still broadcasting that property-wide SSID, which is right here. And all of those EPSKs are in there.
Perfect. With seamless roaming across the property, does the large number of personal SSIDs across all the APs cause an overhead problem? I think you addressed this, but I think it'd be good to reiterate it.
Yeah, so Ozzy, if you want to talk about that, about the beacons and how that may or may not impact the performance, because really we're not adding dozens and dozens of beacons. We're just adding one Wi-Fi, one wireless LAN and one SSID. So it's really just one additional beacon. But what's unique is the override that is set for that beacon, right, Ozzy?
That is correct. You already mentioned it, but to specify more details, right? So when we design an MDU deployment, usually the best practices are to reduce the 2.4 gigahertz power and increase the 5 gig power. And there are fine tunings which we usually do is remove the lower management data frame so that the faraway clients will not be able to connect, or the management frame will not go below that data rate, right? So these are things you can do in an MDU to try to do it from control from the access point side, right? But still the wireless clients may be able to go and connect. The algorithms are different on different wireless clients and IoT. Now, the advantage of having the personal Wi-Fi is you are telling the IoT, okay, the static device, go and connect only to that one. So if you have connected to that particular SSID, that's all. It's not going wrong to another one. Now, and because you already taken care of the other part, right, reducing the power, you, even though you have 40 units nearby, you may not, if you enable 40 units, you may not be hearing all the 40 SSIDs in one unit. Okay, because you already taken care about reducing the power of 2.5 wireless nature and the 5 gig, and you remove the lower data rate. So this is okay, and as Brian mentioned, you are adding only one personal SSID.
Okay. Is it possible to have multiple residents, SSIDs and EPSKs utilizing the same VLAN?
Yeah. So I think that following question example, what is mentioned in the university setting, two friends are on the same building, wanted to able to join the same VLAN and let their device connecting each other, for example, games, right? Okay, so this is possible. Actually, you are right. The key here is you should give the same PSK for the two friends. They wanted to have all the gamings together. That's one way to do it. Or you can create one more EPSK. All the Wi-Fi 6 and 6 access point is capable of 2000 EPSKs on AP itself. So what we need to do is we need to create one more EPSK saying that games PSK or games on unit something, and give that to a different VLAN. That way, both the friends can use the same, share the same PSK, will map to the same VLAN.
Yeah, so I guess that's an interesting use case. We can talk about it more offline if whoever asked the question wants to raise it up with us. But it would probably make more sense to just have one SSID for both of them, right? If they're doing personal SSID versus having like two separate SSIDs that map to the same VLAN that have the same EPSK. But yeah, I mean, certainly that's possible. And also you can set the overrides here in wireless LANs. So for example, if for whatever reason you wanted Mike and Sally both to map to the same VLAN, you could do that here. You could put 1600 for Mike's wireless, and then for Sally's internet, you could also map it to 1600. So there's a lot that you can do through overrides and EPSK, but if you want to talk to us offline so we can better understand that use case, that may be more beneficial.
Okay, we got one more question, and I think it's been clarified, but we'll just, we had one question that was asked. So with personal Wi-Fi, when a tenant leaves their apartment, they'll eventually roam from their personal SSID to the property-wide SSID.
Yeah, so
but keep the same VLAN. Is that correct?
Yeah, so I kind of alluded to that, but I didn't really talk about it in a very clear manner, I suppose. So for mobile devices, it's probably best to stay connected to the property-wide SSID. So like you can see here in building 01 that under the clients list, Mike's iPhone, where it'll be roaming a lot, it'll be mobile, he won't always be in his unit, he'll be going up and down the stairs to the pool, to the gym. It's best to just stay connected to the property-wide SSID. If he's staying in the room for a longer duration, then it could be beneficial for him to then connect to the personal SSID of Mike's wireless, because then that kind of guarantees that he's not going to connect to an AP that's a lot further away if his client device isn't making a good decision. But if he's to roam, if he's connected to the personal SSID and then he leaves his unit, it's not going to do fast roaming, right? It's going to disconnect, and then milliseconds or seconds later, the phone will then be smart enough to connect to a wireless LAN that it has connected to before, that it can connect to, which would be the property-wide SSID. So it wouldn't be a seamless roam. So it may be best to just keep mobile devices on the property SSID just for ease of use and for seamless roaming, whereas the static devices can just remain indefinitely connected to the personal SSIDs.
Understood.